I stood in Alexander Volkov's study, my hands clenched at my sides, and told the most dangerous man in Harbor City one simple word: no. His dark eyes narrowed. Behind him, armed men shifted, hands drifting toward concealed weapons. My 4-year-old daughter Lily was 2 floors above, playing with his son, completely unaware that I just refused the Mafia boss. "You're sure about this?" His voice was soft. Deadly soft. "I'm sure." That moment, that single word, was the culmination of 3 weeks that had transformed my life. 3 weeks since one simple act of kindness had placed me directly in the crosshairs of Harbor City's most powerful and dangerous family. But let me back up. Because 3 weeks earlier, I was nobody. Invisible. Just another broke single mother trying to survive. And this is the story of how one dance, one moment of choosing to see a lonely child when everyone else looked away, changed absolutely everything. Fade to black, 3 weeks earlier, ACT1, the invisible woman, the crystal glasses clinked like wind chimes as I balanced them on my tray, weaving through a sea of designer gowns and $1,000 suits. The Rosewood Hotel ballroom glittered under chandeliers that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. It smelled of expensive perfume, aged whiskey, and that particular scent of wealth, a subtle mixture of entitlement and power that seemed to permeate the very air. I'd worked these charity galas for 3 years. Long enough to know that invisibility came with the uniform. "Champagne, miss?" The woman in emeralds didn't even glance at me as she plucked a glass from my tray, continuing her conversation as if I were nothing but a floating drinks dispenser. I was used to it by now. In Harbor City's elite circles, service workers were just scenery. Mobile furniture. There one moment, forgotten the next. Brothers, you know that feeling. When you work your ass off, when you're essential to making everything run smoothly, but somehow you're still invisible. When your labor matters but you don't. When people look through you like you're made of glass. Yeah. That was my life. My feet already ached in the mandatory heels, and we were only 2 hours into this 8-hour shift. My back screamed from balancing heavy trays. My smile felt painted on, automatic and meaningless. But I needed this job. Desperately. Rent was due next week. The electricity bill had a final notice stamped in red. My ancient Honda had started making a grinding sound I couldn't afford to diagnose. And my daughter Lily, my beautiful, bright 4-year-old girl, was spending another night at my mother's place because mommy had to work. Again. At 4 years old, she was already used to her mother working nights and weekends. Used to being passed between relatives like a beloved burden. Used to seeing me only in the exhausted hours between shifts when I was too tired to do more than heat up chicken nuggets and collapse on our second-hand couch. That thought, that I was missing her childhood one shift at a time, made my chest tighten with familiar guilt. Every father, every mother, every provider knows this weight. The crushing responsibility of keeping your child fed, housed, safe, while watching precious moments slip through your fingers like water. You're trading presents for survival. And there's no good choice, just necessary ones. I blinked back the sting in my eyes and focused on my job. Smile. Serve. Be invisible. Collect tips. Survive another week. But that's when I saw him. The little boy. ACT2, the lonely prince, he sat alone at a corner table, his small legs dangling from a chair too high for his frame. While other children raced across the dance floor in excited packs, shrieking with laughter, he remained perfectly still. His entire focus was consumed by the silverware in front of him, one fork, one knife, one spoon, arranging them over and over in different configurations. His suit was impeccable. Custom-tailored charcoal gray with a burgundy pocket square that matched his bow tie. His dark hair was neatly combed. Everything about him screamed wealth, privilege, perfection. But he sat completely alone. I watched as a couple approached his table, not to speak to him, but to take empty chairs. They moved the furniture around him like he was an obstacle, not a child. He didn't look up. Didn't react. Just continued his careful, methodical arrangements. One fork. One knife. One spoon. Perfect parallel lines. Then perpendicular. Then diagonal. Over and over, with intense concentration. Something in my chest twisted. I'd seen that focus before. My neighbor's son had autism. That same intense concentration on patterns, on order, on systems that made sense in a chaotic world. That same careful deliberation in every movement. This boy wasn't being antisocial. He was being himself. And everyone around him had decided that himself wasn't worth their time. For the next hour, I watched the pattern repeat. Adults would approach his table, take what they needed, and leave. Children would run past without inviting him to play. He remained in his bubble of one, perfectly isolated in a room full of hundreds. No one saw him. And that, brothers, that right there, was something I understood in my bones. I was making my rounds with fresh champagne when I overheard the conversation that changed everything. Two women stood near the boys' table, their voices low but not low enough. "That's Volkov's son. The autistic one. I heard the mother is long gone. Can you blame her?" My hands tightened on the tray. Imagine being tied to that family with a defective child. The glasses rattled. Anger surged through me like electricity, hot and immediate and righteous. Defective. They called a 6-year-old child defective. Brothers, I don't care what your politics are, what your opinions are on anything else in this world, there is a line. And calling a child defective? That's so far over the line you can't even see the line anymore. I thought of my Lily. How fiercely I loved her. How I would tear apart anyone who called her less than perfect. How every child deserves to be seen, valued, protected. Before I could think better of it, I turned to those women, my voice low but sharp as broken glass. "He can probably hear you, you know." 4 pairs of eyes turned to me, wide with shock. The furniture had spoken. A woman with a pinched face and diamond earrings the size of grapes raised one perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Excuse me." I should have backed down. I should have apologized and scurried away. I needed this job. I couldn't afford to antagonize guests, especially guests who donated enough money to have hospital wings named after them. But I couldn't stop. Children aren't deaf just because they're different. Maybe show some humanity. I walked away before they could respond, my heart hammering against my ribs. Stupid. Stupid. I'd probably just cost myself this job. But God help me, I couldn't stand there and listen to that poison another second. The orchestra shifted to a softer melody. A waltz floated through the air like a gentle invitation. On the dance floor, the event organizers announced the family dance, fathers with daughters, mothers with sons. I watched a small girl in a pink dress tug her reluctant father onto the floor. His stern face melted into pure joy as he twirled her around, both of them laughing. My chest ached. Lily had no father to dance with. Jason had disappeared the moment I told him I was pregnant, leaving nothing but unpaid bills and broken promises. My eyes drifted back to the corner table. The boy was watching the dancers now, his silverware forgotten. Something in his expression, a mixture of longing and confusion, of wanting to understand something just beyond his grasp, absolutely cracked me open. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was anger at those women. Maybe it was seeing my own daughter's loneliness reflected in this child. Maybe it was just the reckless courage of someone who'd already screwed up and had nothing left to lose. Whatever it was, I set down my tray and walked directly toward him. Act 3, the dance, I knelt beside his chair, bringing myself to his eye level. Up close, I could see his features more clearly, the serious set of his mouth, the long lashes framing deep brown eyes, the careful way he held himself. "Hi there," I said softly, gently. "My name is Sophie." Would you like to dance? He didn't look directly at me, his gaze settling somewhere near my shoulder. His hand stilled on the silverware. I'm male, he said, his voice clear and precise. I don't know how to dance. That's okay. I can show you. It's easy. I promise. I held out my hand, palm up, making no move to touch him unless he wanted me to. You can say no if you don't want to. That's perfectly okay too. For a long moment, he stared at my outstretched hand. I could almost see him processing, calculating, deciding. Then, with deliberate care, he placed his small palm against mine. Okay, he said simply. Brothers, I'm not ashamed to tell you, my eyes burned. This small act of trust from a child who'd been ignored all evening felt like being handed something precious and fragile. I helped him down from his chair, acutely aware that we were being watched. Not just by scattered individuals anymore, but by many eyes. Conversations were slowing. Heads turning. I led him to the edge of the dance floor where there was more space, away from the swirling couples in the center. We can start here, I explained. Where there's more room. Is that all right? He nodded, looking down at our hands. First, you stand on my shoes. That's how my mom taught me when I was little. Carefully, Male stepped onto the tops of my already aching pumps. I took both his hands in mine, creating a safe distance between us, not crowding him. Now we just sway a little. Like this. I demonstrated, moving gently from side to side. To my surprise, he followed perfectly, his body relaxing slightly as we found a rhythm. You're a natural, I told him. For the first time, he looked up, his eyes almost meeting mine. The ghost of a smile flickered across his face. We moved slowly at the edge of the dance floor. A waitress in a cheap uniform and a little boy in a perfect suit, swaying to a waltz while the wealthy watched. I hummed along with the music, and after a few moments, Mel began to hum too, matching my tune with perfect pitch. I was so focused on him, on this quiet moment of connection, that I didn't notice the silence spreading across the ballroom until it was complete. The music played on. But every conversation had stopped. I looked up. Every eye in the room was on us. Some faces showed curiosity. Some disapproval. Some unexpected softness, as if we'd reminded them of something they'd forgotten, maybe their own humanity. But one man's stare hit differently. He stood directly across the dance floor, and even from that distance, the intensity of his gaze made my skin prickle with instinctive wariness. He was tall, taller than most men in the room, with shoulders that strained against his perfectly tailored black suit. Dark hair silvered at the temples. A face that could have been carved from stone, all sharp angles and cold symmetry. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Dark as midnight. Bottomless. Fixed on us with the focused precision of a predator. I knew who he was without ever having seen him before. Everyone in Harbor City knew of Alexander Volkov. The Russian who had conquered the city's underworld with ruthless efficiency. The Mafia boss whose name was whispered in equal parts fear and respect. The man whose business interests were front-page news, whose charity donations were celebrated even while everyone pretended not to know where the money came from. The monster of Harbor City. And I was dancing with his son. ACT-4, the monster's gaze, I couldn't look away from Volkov's piercing stare. His eyes held mine across the polished floor, and I had the irrational urge to scoop up Mail and run. Instead, I forced myself to continue our gentle swaying, pretending I didn't feel the weight of his attention like a physical pressure against my skin. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, I whispered to Mail, who was still standing on my shoes. He repeated the count under his breath, perfectly in rhythm, oblivious to his father's scrutiny. When I gathered the courage to look up again, Volkov was moving toward us. He didn't rush. Men like him never needed to hurry. But each purposeful step closed the distance between us with terrifying inevitability. The crowd melted away from his path without him having to say a word. Two men flanked him, security, obviously, their bulky frames failing to conceal the outline of weapons beneath their jackets. "Dad's coming," Male said matter-of-factly, without turning around. His posture didn't change, but I felt his hands tighten slightly in mine. "Is that okay?" I asked softly. He nodded, still counting under his breath. I braced myself as Volkov reached us. Expected what? A harsh reprimand? A cold dismissal? Security dragging me away while everyone watched? Instead, he simply stood at the edge of the dance floor, watching us with that unnerving intensity. Up close, he was even more intimidating. A scar ran along his jaw, pale against his olive skin, the kind of mark left by something sharp and unforgiving. He smelled of expensive cologne with notes of sandalwood and something darker beneath, like smoke or gunpowder. Power radiated from him in almost tangible waves. Brothers, I've faced down angry bosses, aggressive customers, men who thought my uniform meant I was available for harassment. But this was different. This wasn't anger or lust or petty cruelty. This was pure, concentrated power. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that just is. "Miss," he said finally, his voice deep and laced with an accent that turned the single syllable into something dangerous. "Sir," I managed, surprised my voice remained steady. "May I cut in?" Before I could answer, Male spoke up. "We're counting, Dad. 1, 2, 3. His voice was clear and precise, free of the anxiety currently strangling my ability to breathe normally. Something flickered across Volkov's face. A softening so subtle I might have imagined it. "Of course. Please continue." To my astonishment, he stepped back, giving us space. But he didn't leave. Instead, he stood guard at the perimeter of our little dance floor section, his presence creating an invisible barrier that no one dared approach. The orchestra shifted to a new waltz, slightly faster. Male adapted immediately, his counting speeding up to match the tempo. I twirled him carefully, earning a small surprised sound that might have been delight. "You're doing wonderfully," I told him. "I like dancing," he replied, as if discovering this fact for himself. "The counting makes sense." "It does, doesn't it? Music is just math you can feel." This earned me another almost smile, and a thoughtful nod. When the song ended, Male stepped off my shoes and looked up, his gaze settling somewhere near my chin, the closest he'd come to eye contact. "Thank you for the dance," he said formally, like a miniature gentleman. "I'd like to go back to my table now." "Of course," I replied, releasing his hands. "It was a pleasure dancing with you, Mikhail." He turned and walked directly to his father, who placed a protective hand on his shoulder. Volkov's eyes never left my face. "Miss?" He let the question hang in the air. "Sophie," I supplied, resisting the urge to add just Sophie, as if my lack of status needed clarification. "Sophie." He repeated my name, transforming it in his mouth into something both beautiful and vaguely threatening. "You will join us." It wasn't a request. ACT 5, an offer that changes everything. Brothers, here's something they don't tell you about fear: it's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's sitting at an elegant table with a mafia boss and his son, holding a crystal glass you're terrified to drop, while your mind races through 1,000 scenarios of how this could go wrong. That was me 30 minutes after the dance ended. One of Volkov's men, a mountain-shaped man with a neck like a tree trunk, had escorted me to Male's corner table. Not touching me, but close enough that I understood I wasn't being given a choice. My supervisor, Marcos, had pointedly looked everywhere but at me when I desperately scanned the room for help. Message received. Whatever Alexander Volkov wanted, Alexander Volkov got. Even if it was a waitress's time during a busy gala. Now I perched on the edge of a chair, hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling, while Male methodically arranged his silverware and Volkov studied me with those unnerving dark eyes. "You dance well," he said finally. "Thank you. My mother taught me. And where did you learn to see my son when everyone else chooses blindness? The directness of the question caught me off guard. I glanced at Mail, who appeared absorbed in his task but was tilting his head slightly toward our conversation, listening. I have a daughter, I said softly. She's 4. Children should never be invisible. Something dangerous flashed in Volkov's eyes. Yet in rooms like this, certain children remain unseen. Unless they are perfect accessories for their perfect parents. The bitterness in his voice was so raw it startled me. For a moment, the feared Mafia boss disappeared, replaced by something I recognized all too well, a parent's fierce protectiveness. The next 20 minutes passed in surreal conversation. Volkov asked about my daughter. My work. My life. His questions were precise, careful, and I had the unsettling sense that he was assessing me for something beyond polite small talk. Then Mail spoke up, his eyes focused above my shoulder. Dad, can Sophie come to the library with us? I want to show her my books. I froze. Volkov's expression remained unreadable, but I felt the weight of his assessment like a physical touch. Perhaps another time, Mikhail. It's getting late, and I'm sure Sophie has other obligations. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by guilt at the slight droop of Mail's shoulders. Before I could think better of it, I heard myself say, I'd love to see your books someday. If your dad thinks it's okay. The words hung in the air between us. You don't make casual plans with the child of Harbor City's most notorious criminal. You especially don't put him in a position where he has to refuse his son in public. To my surprise, Volkov's lips curved in what might have been the ghost of a smile. We shall see. Then one of his men approached, bent to whisper in Volkov's ear. His expression hardened instantly. We must leave, he announced, standing. Mikhail, it's time to go. Mail's face immediately showed anxiety. But it's only 9:17. You said we'd stay until 10 o'clock. I recognized the signs of approaching distress, the rigid posture, the slightly rocking motion, the increasingly frantic tone. Without thinking, I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out my secret weapon, a small stress ball shaped like a star that I carried for my own anxiety. Mikhail, I said softly, placing it on the table near his hand, not forcing it on him. This helps me when things change unexpectedly. You can squeeze it or roll it between your fingers. Would you like to try? He stared at the star, breathing still rapid but attention captured. After a hesitant moment, he picked it up, pressing it between his palms. It's squishy, he observed, some tension leaving his small frame. Yes. And it always returns to its shape, no matter how much you squeeze it. Kind of magical, isn't it? His fingers worked the star methodically. Gradually, his breathing slowed. Volkov watched this exchange with an expression I couldn't decipher. You can keep it if you like, I offered. I have others at home. Thank you, Mail said formally. He turned to his father, the star clutched in his hand. I'm ready now. Volkov placed his hand on his son's shoulder, but his eyes were fixed on me. You have my gratitude, he said, each word precise and weighted. It should have been a dismissal. I should have nodded politely and returned to my duties. Instead, I found myself asking, will he be all right? Something dangerous flickered in Volkov's eyes. A reminder of exactly who I was addressing. My son is always taken care of, Miss Sophie. His voice carried a warning I felt in my bones. Always. They left, father and son, surrounded by their security detail, and I exhaled slowly, only then realizing I'd been holding my breath. But brothers, the night wasn't over. Because 10 minutes later, that mountain-shaped man was back, blocking my path. Mr. Volkov would like your contact information, he stated flatly. Fear spiked through me. My what? Why? Your phone number. Address. I don't think it wasn't a request. He held out a phone, screen open to a new contact form. Self-preservation warred with terror as I typed in my information with trembling fingers. What choice did I have? Refuse the most dangerous man in Harbor City? The man, I'd later learn his name was Anton, checked my information before slipping the phone back into his jacket pocket. Have a good evening, Miss Williams. Then he was gone, leaving me standing in the middle of the ballroom with one terrifying realization: I just placed myself, and by extension my daughter, directly on Alexander Volkov's radar. ACT-6, inside the fortress, the next morning, I opened an envelope that had been delivered to my apartment. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive cream paper: Miss Williams, your kindness to my son last night was unexpected and rare. Mikhail speaks of you this morning with unusual animation. I would like to express my gratitude in person. A car will collect you after your shift concludes at Denny's on Harborview Drive. You have my word that no harm will come to you. A. Volkov. Beneath the note was a check made out to Sophie Williams for $5,000. $5,000. Brothers, let me tell you what that number means when you're living paycheck to paycheck. That's not money. That's air. That's breathing room. That's the difference between survival and actual living. That's your electric bill, your rent, your car repair, and groceries with something left over. That's the cushion between you and disaster. For one dance with a lonely child. But nothing comes without strings attached. Especially not from men like Alexander Volkov. So when his car picked me up after my shift that Sunday afternoon, a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than I'd earn in 5 years, I went with my eyes wide open. Anton drove me to Volkov's estate. 40 minutes up the coast to exclusive cliffside properties overlooking the bay. Through iron gates that opened silently. Down a tree-lined drive. To a sprawling stone mansion that was beautiful in a forbidding way. Inside, I was led to a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and leather furniture that smelled of money and old paper. Volkov appeared moments later, wearing charcoal slacks and a white shirt open at the collar. More casual than the night before, but no less commanding. You returned the check, he said. It wasn't a question, the envelope sat on the table between us. It's too much. It's nothing. Not to me. Maybe, I said carefully, but in your world, everything has a price. I danced with Mikhail because he deserved to be seen. Not because I wanted payment. He studied me over the rim of his glass, he'd poured us both amber liquid I hadn't touched. A rare perspective. Then he made me an offer that would change everything, become Mail's companion. 3 days a week, 4 to 8 p.m. Spend time with him, engage in his interests, help him expand his comfort with social situations. My daughter Lily would be welcome to join. Compensation, $5,000 per week. $20,000 a month. My vision actually blurred. That was more than I made in 3 months of grinding double shifts. What's the real reason? I asked. This isn't just about Mikhail. His expression went cold. You question my motives regarding my own child? I fought every instinct to back down. I question why a man like you would bring a waitress into his home, offer her an impossible sum, and expect nothing beyond time with his son. For a long moment, silence stretched between us. Then he moved to the window, his back to me. Last night, for 17 minutes, my son danced. He smiled. He connected with another human being who wasn't paid to tolerate his differences. He turned back to me, and the raw emotion in his eyes caught me completely off guard. So yes, Sophie Williams, I am offering you an impossible sum because that moment was priceless to me. Brothers, in that moment, I saw him clearly. Whatever else Alexander Volkov might be, and I had no illusions about the darkness his power was built on, his love for his son was absolutely genuine. May I think about it? I asked. I'll need your answer by Wednesday. That Wednesday, after 2 sleepless nights weighing the risks against the opportunity, I called the number he'd given me. I accept. But I have conditions. There was a pause, then a sound that might have been a low chuckle. Name them. Lily's safety is non-negotiable. If I ever feel she's in danger, we're out immediately. Agreed. And I'm not. I'm not available for anything beyond time with Mikhail. This is about him. Only him. Another pause, longer this time. Understood. And just like that, I became part of Alexander Volkov's world. ACT-7, transformation. The next 3 weeks became a rhythm that defied everything I thought I knew about my life. Monday and Thursday, 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Anton would pick up Lily and me from her new preschool, Harbor Prep, tuition mysteriously, taken care of, and drive us to the estate. Mail would be waiting, often with some new specimen or book or project to share. At first, Lily was shy, overwhelmed by the huge house and the serious boy who spoke like a tiny professor. But Mail was endlessly patient with her, showing her his collections with careful explanations, adjusting his communication for her age. Purple is opposite yellow on the color wheel, he told her once, examining her purple backpack. It's made of red and blue. Primary colors make secondary colors when mixed. Lily stared at him with wide eyes. You're really smart. Mail nodded matter-of-factly. I read the encyclopedia. I'm on volume P now. They became unlikely friends. She'd build block towers while he carefully calculated structural integrity. She'd ask endless questions that would exhaust most adults, and he'd answer every single one with thoughtful precision. And through it all, Alexander watched. Not obviously. Not intrusively. But he was always aware, standing in doorways, sitting with his laptop nearby, making sure his son was happy, safe, engaging. I began to understand him in pieces. The way he'd have Lily's favorite cookies freshly baked for every visit. The way he'd researched sensory-friendly activities after I mentioned Lily sometimes got overwhelmed by noise. The way he spoke to both children with genuine respect, never condescending, never dismissing their thoughts as childish. He was, I realized with growing surprise, a good man. Not a good man, I wasn't naive about what he did in the rest of his life. But a good father. A good employer. Someone who kept his word absolutely. And somewhere in those weeks, something shifted between us two. It started small. His hand steadying my elbow when I stumbled on the terrace steps. The way his eyes would find mine across a room when Mail said something particularly charming, sharing the moment. The coffee that appeared at my elbow, prepared exactly how I liked it without my having to ask. How did you know? I asked once, holding the cup. I pay attention, he said simply. Brothers, here's what they don't tell you about dangerous men: when they decide to care about something, they care with the same intensity they apply to everything else. Completely. Absolutely. Dangerously. I wasn't sure what was happening between us. But I felt it, the tension when our hands brushed accidentally, the way his voice softened when he spoke my name, the protectiveness that extended beyond professional concern. And then the threats came. ACT-8, when danger knocks, there has been a situation. Anton's face was grim as he delivered the message one Thursday evening. I just arrived, Lily bouncing excitedly toward the garden room where Mail was waiting. What kind of situation? A business rival. Making threats. Mr. Volkov is implementing additional security measures. Ice flooded my veins. Is Mikhail in danger? Mr. Volkov would never allow that. Which wasn't an answer. That evening, Volkov pulled me aside after the children were settled with a movie. I need to discuss something with you. We stood on the terrace overlooking the bay. Armed men patrolled below, more than usual, I realized. Many more. A business associate has made certain threats, he said, his voice carefully controlled. Nothing unusual in my world, but I take no chances where Mikhail is concerned. Or those connected to him. Those connected to him. The implication settled over me like a heavy blanket. You're saying Lily and I are targets. I'm saying I would like to provide security. Discreet. A detail that would maintain distance but ensure safety. Every protective instinct in my body screamed. For how long? Until the situation is resolved. His jaw tightened. Days. A week at most. You're going to kill him. I said it flatly. Not a question. He didn't flinch. Didn't deny. I'm going to ensure my family is safe. His family. He'd said, my family. Not just Mikhail. Family. When, exactly, had Lily and I become part of that definition? I don't want Lily exposed to violence, I said, my voice shaking. Or even the suggestion of it. Neither do I. His hand covered mine where it rested on the stone balustrade. Warm. Steady. That is precisely why I'm offering protection. I looked up at him. Really looked. At the sharp intelligence in his dark eyes. The scar along his jaw. The careful control masking genuine concern. 1 week, I said firmly. We accept security for 1 week. And if this situation isn't resolved by then, Lily and I take a break from visits until it is. I expected argument. Expected him to use his power, his intimidation, to override my conditions. Instead, he nodded once. Reasonable. I'm serious, Alexander. I won't compromise her safety. Nor would I ever ask you to. His hand tightened briefly on mine. Your boundaries are respected, Sophie. Always. That night, as Anton drove us home, I noticed the second car following at a distance. Our new shadows. Lily, exhausted and happy, dozed in her car seat, clutching a small stuffed animal Male had insisted she take home. I stared out at the dark streets of Harbor City and realized something profound. I wasn't just working for the Volkov family anymore. I was part of it. And that meant I was part of their dangers too. ACT 9, boundaries and belonging, the situation resolved itself in 5 days. I never knew the details. I didn't want to. But Anton's grim expression softened, the extra security personnel disappeared, and Alexander's carefully controlled tension eased into something closer to his normal watchful calm. It's handled, was all he told me. Somewhere in Harbor City, a business rival had learned a fatal lesson about threatening Alexander Volkov's family. I should have been horrified. Should have grabbed Lily and run from this world of violence and consequences. But here's what I'd learned in those weeks: violence wasn't casual for Alexander. It wasn't recreational. It was a tool he used with precision to protect what he loved. To him, the moral calculation was simple: threaten his child, face consequences. Was that right? Was that justice? I didn't know. I still don't. But I understood it. Every parent understands it, that primal instinct that says, anything to keep them safe. Most of us never have to act on it. Alexander had the power and the will to follow through. The difference between us wasn't the instinct. It was the capability. On the first Thursday after the threat was eliminated, Alexander asked to speak with me privately before I left. We stood in his study, the same room where this had all begun 3 weeks earlier. Mikhail's birthday is next weekend, he said. He's requested that you and Lily attend. A small gathering. Family and close associates only. Family, I repeated softly. Yes. His dark eyes held mine. If you're comfortable with that definition. Brothers, this was the moment. The moment to set boundaries. To define what this arrangement was and wasn't. To protect my heart and my daughters from getting too entangled in a world that could destroy us. I should have maintained professional distance. Should have smiled politely and said, we'd be honored to attend Mikhail's birthday as his companion and her daughter. Instead, I heard myself ask, what does family mean to you? He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the quiet room. It means the people I would die to protect. The people whose happiness matters more than my own. The people I trust with the parts of myself I show to no one else. His hand came up, fingers gentle against my jaw, tilting my face up to his. You and Lily have become family, Sophie. Whether you intended it or not. Whether it's wise or not. My breath caught. Alexander. I'm not asking for anything, he said quietly. I'm simply telling you the truth. What you do with that truth is your choice entirely. For a long moment, we stood there, his hand warm against my skin, his eyes searching mine. Then I stepped back. Creating space. Creating boundaries. I need time, I said. To think. To understand what this means. Of course. He dropped his hand immediately, respecting my withdrawal. Take all the time you need. As I walked to the door, I paused. Alexander. We'll come to Mikhail's birthday. As family. The smile that crossed his face was small, but genuine. Thank you. ACT 10, chosen family. Mikhail's birthday party was nothing like I expected. Not a lavish affair with hundreds of guests and elaborate entertainment. Instead, it was intimate, held in a garden room with maybe 20 people total. A few of Alexander's most trusted associates and their families. Mikhail's therapy team. Anton and the core security staff. And us. Mail's face lit up when we arrived, Lily carrying a carefully wrapped gift she'd insisted on choosing herself, a book about marine biology. It's about whales, she announced proudly. Because you're gonna be a marine biologist. Or an astronaut, Mail reminded her seriously. I haven't decided yet. You can be both, Lily said with 4-year-old certainty. You're smart enough. Watching them together, my daughter and this extraordinary boy who'd brought us into this world, I felt my chest tighten with emotion. They'd become real friends. Not because anyone forced it. Not because of money or obligation. But because Lily saw Mail exactly as he was and decided he was interesting, kind, and worth her time. She saw him. Just like I had that first night. The party was beautiful. A cake shaped like the solar system, Mail's special interest. Games that were sensory-friendly but engaging. Conversation that included Mail in every moment, never talking over him or around him. This was a child who was loved. Absolutely, fiercely loved. Late in the afternoon, as the party wound down, Alexander found me on the terrace. Thank you for coming. Thank you for including us. We stood in comfortable silence, watching Lily and Mail examine the birthday cake's intricate frosting planets with intense focus. She's good for him, Alexander said quietly. You're good for him. He's good for her too. For both of us. He turned to face me fully. Sophie, I meant what I said last week. About family. About what you've become to us. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm not a good man. I've done things, terrible things, that I'll answer for eventually. But with you, with our children. I want to be better. You make me want to be better. Brothers, this is where the story comes full circle. Back to that moment I described at the beginning. Standing in his study, his men waiting, the weight of a decision pressing down on me. Because what he asked next changed everything. I want more than companionship for Mikhail, he said, his voice low and intense. I want partnership. I want someone who sees us, truly sees us, and chooses to stay anyway. Someone who calls me on my bullshit. Someone who sets boundaries and expects me to respect them. His hand covered mine. I want you, Sophie. Not as an employee. Not as a convenience. As a partner. In raising Mikhail. In building something real. In creating the family he deserves. And that's when I said it. That word I told you about at the beginning. No. His hand stilled on mine. Behind him, I sensed Anton shifting, uncertain. Not like this, I continued, holding his gaze. Not with you asking and me agreeing like it's a business arrangement. If we do this, it's equal. Partners. That means I get a say in decisions about Mikhail. About our life. About everything. I took a breath, steadying myself. It means you don't make unilateral choices about our safety without consulting me first. It means Lily's well-being is always the top priority, even above Mikhail's wants. It means boundaries, Alexander. Real boundaries. And you respecting them even when it's inconvenient. Silence stretched between us. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. Real and warm and almost boyish. Equal partners. Equal partners, I confirmed. With you having full say in our family decisions. Yes. And maintaining boundaries even when I don't like them. Especially then. He pulled me closer, his forehead resting against mine. You're sure about this? About us? Because once you're in, Sophie, I don't let go. That's not a threat, it's a promise. This family. We protect each other. Always. I thought about everything that had brought me here. One dance. One lonely child. One moment of choosing to see someone everyone else overlooked. That single choice had transformed my entire life. I'm sure, I said. And I was. Epilogue, the message, brothers, if you've stayed with me this far, you deserve to know how this ends. 6 months later, Lily and I moved into the estate. Not as employees. Not as guests. As family. Mail calls Lily his sister now. She calls him her best friend. They're both right. Alexander and I. We're navigating something neither of us expected. It's not easy, combining my working-class upbringing with his world of wealth and danger. Negotiating boundaries between a single mother and a mafia boss. Learning to trust each other with our deepest vulnerabilities. But every day, we choose each other. Choose this family we've built from unlikely pieces. I still work, by the way. Not because I have to financially, Alexander made sure of that, but because I want to. Because my identity isn't just mother or partner. I matter too. And he respects that. Here's what I learned, brothers. What I want you to take from this story, your worth isn't determined by who sees you. It's determined by who you choose to see. When everyone else looked at Mail, they saw the autistic one. The defective child. The problem to be managed or ignored. I saw a brilliant, careful, wonderful boy who deserved to be seen. That choice, that single choice to see someone, changed everything. So look around your life. Who's invisible to you? Who's being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed? Maybe it's a coworker everyone ignores. Maybe it's a struggling family member. Maybe it's a kid sitting alone at the playground. Maybe it's that person in the mirror who you've stopped really seeing. Choose to see them. Not with pity. Not with judgment. Just with clear eyes and an open heart. Because sometimes, just sometimes, one moment of genuine seeing can change everything. For them. For you. For everyone. That's not weakness, brothers. That's power. Real power. The power to transform lives with nothing more than attention, respect, and the courage to care when it would be easier not to. Alexander Volkov built an empire on fear. But what he really wanted, what he'd give everything for, was someone who saw his son with love instead of judgment. That's what we all want, isn't it? To be seen. To be valued. To matter. So be the person who sees. Be the person who values. Be the person who makes others matter. One dance. One moment. One choice. That's all it takes to change everything. Closing title card, sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is show kindness to someone everyone else ignores. But that danger? It's worth it. Every single time.